Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. We're really excited to have you joining us for our webinar today. This is a part of a two-part series that we're hosting on integrating UX research into product development to help product teams partner better with their UX research peers. My name is Katie. I'm a part of the marketing team here at AnswerLab. And before we start, I just want to run through a couple quick housekeeping items before I turn it over to Molly. The first is that this webinar is being recorded, and everyone will receive a copy of that recording via email afterwards. So if for any reason you're disconnected or you have to jump to a meeting, don't worry, we'll make sure that you still receive this content. We'll also be sharing a copy of the deck in that email as well. So if there's anything that you spot that you want to make sure you grab a screenshot of, don't worry about it. We'll get you a copy of it. If you have any questions you'd like to submit, you can do so via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer a few at the end of the discussion, time permitting. And we are going to do our best to keep this to 45 minutes so that you can stay on track for the rest of your day. We'll get you to your next meeting at the top of the hour. Next slide. So for those of you who haven't heard of AnswerLab, we are a full-service user experience research firm that helps product teams navigate how research can fit into your product development lifecycle. So we combine deep UX research expertise with industry context understanding to help you uncover user needs and optimize your product features for maximum impact. And you can learn more at answerlab.com. Next slide. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce you to Molly Kessler, who's going to be our presenter for both webinars in this series. Molly originally launched her career in product management and then transitioned over to UX research from that role because of her love for data-driven user insights. Today, Molly is a senior UX research manager at AnswerLab. She's been with us for almost 6 years now. I'm really excited for you all to hear what she has to share today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Katie. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your interest in this topic. So today's content is geared towards product managers, and it hits on two main points. First, how product managers can identify the right research objectives to then work with UX researchers to drive their roadmap forward in a user-centric way. And second, how product managers can work hand in hand with researchers to fit that research into their roadmap without slowing down development and slowing down product updates. I want to reiterate from my intro that I am not a product manager. I'm a UX researcher, but I have been one in the past. I started my career in product management for about 5 years. And then once I started relying on research to drive my decisions, I really found that that's where my true passion was. And I transitioned into research from there for the last almost 10 years. In both roles, I've seen how valuable strong collaboration between UX researchers and product managers can be. So if you are joining me today and you're a UX researcher, I hope you'll get some insight into how to work successfully with product managers. I still work with product managers every day at AnswerLab as we help them get the data that they need to be successful with their product. So I hope that my point of view will resonate with you all today, no matter what role you're in. So a high-level overview of the points I'm going to cover today. UX research at every stage of your product can help you ensure market success, continuously improve that product, and minimize development waste as well as design waste. To get there, you can turn your product goals, your product stage, and/or your product knowledge into your research goals. That'll help you do the right research at the right time, and then matching your research cadence to your development cadence so you can fit that research into your roadmap. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about a couple of how-tos today. So before I jump into the hows, I just want to take a moment to frame up the why. So as a product manager, you are juggling a lot. So if you just take a minute right now to think about all the things you're juggling today, this week, this quarter. Like, it's a lot, right? So you're owning the performance of your product and how it hopefully improves over time, whether that be increasing usage, increasing sales, or reducing friction, right? Driving down the number of customers who need support. And you also have a lot of stakeholders that you need to communicate effectively with, including those in IT and those on the business side. So I want to start with just like an anecdote, like a brief example of how a client of mine who is a product manager recently got a report from UX research that helped her with the performance of her product and especially with stakeholder communication. So the study was a usability audit that this client does annually. So the methodology was usability with qualitative benchmarking. So a moderator gives participants tasks, and then they measure the success and failure and other metrics around the tasks. And the output of the research was threefold. So first, it was usability metrics. In this case, specifically year-over-year metrics, since it's an annual audit, that communicate in numbers to the product manager's leadership and business stakeholders that the performance of the experience is improving. Second, a report of qualitative themes that help her stakeholders understand general sentiments about the product and user mental models. And then the final deliverable was a list, literally a spreadsheet, of usability pain points and even bugs discovered during the research sessions that communicates to the developers exactly what their next step should be. So if that example sounds like something that would be helpful for you and you want to integrate UX research or more UX research into the development of your product, your first question might be, where do I start? So usually the best place to start is by defining clear research objectives. So today I want to talk about 3 starting points, 3 places you can start to define your research objectives. The first one is you can start with your business goals. Research should have a direct positive impact on your product KPIs and your business goals. So working backwards from those goals is a good way to ensure that your research objectives are aligned with them. So let's talk about how you can translate your KPIs into UX research objectives. So as you know, KPIs measure the health of your product experience, and they usually roll up to a larger business goal, often an organizational business goal. Tagging the KPI measurements to key moments of your user journey, here I've called them CUJs, which can stand for critical user journey or core user journey. So tagging KPIs to key moments in your CUJs can help you show how your product experience can impact those KPIs. If your CUJs are tied to KPIs, it also makes your CUJs measurable. Your KPIs can show, those metrics can show if changes made within the CUJs are having a positive outcome. KPIs can also show which CUJs are pain points, right? Which ones have room for improvement. And those are often the ones that need to be the focus of your user research. So an example, what does this look like in practice? An example of a business goal could be to improve customer satisfaction. And the KPI metric used to track that goal could be call to the help center. So working backwards from that metric, you can identify things like which tasks in your product drive calls to the help center, which user journeys or use cases involve those specific tasks, and then which features and functions does the user encounter during those journeys. This kind of mapping, where you take the time to think critically about the impact your product's UX has on the metrics that drive business goals, and then ideally validate the CUJs with your users, it can help you do 3 key things. First is turn your product goals into research goals, right? By understanding where the research needs to focus to have a positive impact on your product metrics. Second, prioritize your research goals, since the CUJs that are not moving the needle in a positive way need to be prioritized for improvement first. And ultimately, this can help you measure the business impact of UX research, which is really hard to do, but this is one way to approach it. I actually got a question in the questions you could submit before the webinar about how to prioritize UX research when resources are low, right? When you have a ton of things you want to research and not many resources. Point 2 here, I think, is really important for that. If you can map your journeys, your CUJs to your KPIs, then you know which ones to prioritize, right? Because they're going to be the ones that drive those KPIs forward. If you don't have your CUJs mapped out, This can be a big undertaking, but it's totally worth it, especially if you're being asked to measure the impact of UX research in your organization. At AnswerLab, we just did a deliverable. It was really unique. It was a playbook, a CUJ playbook, we called it. So really a manual for how to identify CUJs and how to connect them to KPIs. A super helpful resource for that client, that organization to use and rely on moving forward. So they can use this approach, tying things to their business goals to solidify their research objectives. The second starting point, excuse me, sometimes I get to breathe when I'm talking. The second starting point I want to talk to you today is about starting with your product itself. Where is it in the product development cycle? So mapping the stage your product or your feature, your function, your enhancement is in to the different types of value that UX research can bring at all of these stages can help you understand what your objectives are. So starting with concept stage. Maybe your product is really early on, early stages, and it's more of an idea than a product. Some of your questions might be things like, who are my customers? And so some methodologies that are a great fit to help you answer that question are exploratory interviews or building personas, right? Those fictional characters that represent potential users. You might be wondering, how do users currently accomplish this task or their goals that I'm trying to solve for? Competitive analysis can be a really low lift starting point here, a methodology that can show you what's out there today. And then jobs to be done, that is research within the framework of the idea that people buy a product or a service to do a job can be really helpful for understanding how users accomplish a goal or a task currently. You might be wondering, is my idea viable? Like, really important question, right? You could do a concept test or also quantitative research, quantitative desirability to measure with a larger sample and sort of test the market. And then the final question here that we sometimes see at the concept stage is more of an internal question, right? Is my team aligned and ready to move forward? So some methodologies here, a stakeholder workshop to get everybody together and ensure that alignment, or journey mapping, which gives you a visual artifact, right, to make sure everybody is aligned on the customer journey. So this is just a sampling of the questions you might have at this product stage and the research methodologies that can help you get answers to those questions. But if it's helpful to you, like Katie said, you don't have to grab a screenshot. You can if you want, but we'll be sending this deck out after the webinar. But this could be a great starting point for a conversation with your UX researcher. So when it comes to objectives, research at the concept stage, objectives can include defining the problem that you're solving, understanding your audience, assessing your competition, and then also gauging the appeal of your idea. An experienced UX researcher should be able to guide you to the right methodology for these objectives. I do want to note, it's important for me to note for you all that these different, as I speak to these different stages, that they also apply to a piece of a product. So if you're working on a live, mature product, but you have a concept for a new feature or a new functionality, a lot of this still applies to that, right? So I mentioned jobs to be done as a really great methodology for understanding how users accomplish a goal currently. When you apply the job to a feature or enhancement or functionality, that framework is really helpful there. So moving a little bit further along, let's say your product is in the design phase. You might have questions like, how should I organize my information? A couple methodologies calling out here, competitive analysis again, right? See what's out there, but also card sorting, where you actually ask participants to categorize things for you, right? Categorize topics based on what makes sense. Maybe you have an amazing design team and they've given you 2 or 3 really nice designs. So how can I decide between multiple design options? A concept test with those designs, or some qualitative A/B testing where the moderator walks through a couple of options and asks participants to compare them, can help you make that decision, letting users drive that decision. How can I improve my design before investing in prototyping. So at the design stage, doing some testing with wireframes or doing a heuristic evaluation where a UX expert reviews the site, comparing it to recognized usability principles, can help you do some like low lift testing before you invest resources in prototyping. So again, just a sample of a few questions and methodologies you could use to incorporate UX research at this step. But using the right methods at this stage can help you collect data from your users using low fidelity and therefore low effort for your team designs. At this design stage, I have tested with text descriptions, static images, mural boards, PowerPoint. You can save a lot of valuable time and prototyping resources with the right kind of UX research at this stage. So moving to objectives. Objectives at this stage can include things like understanding how your product should be laid out and organized, letting users break a tie right between design options, especially if the team disagrees on which option is best, and then feeling confident and ready to invest those resources in prototyping. Prototype stage. So when you get here and you do have a working prototype, research is usually focused on usability testing, right? With the goal of understanding how users interact with your solution and knowing that your interface is usable before launch. So if the big question is how will users interact with my product, a couple methodologies that you can see on the left of this slide: moderated usability testing, unmoderated usability testing. Even if you have fewer resources, that can be a really low lift because the user takes themselves through the tasks, right, and thinks out loud. And then I mentioned this before, qualitative benchmarking to get a baseline at the prototype stage of how successful users are with the different tasks, key tasks, can be a great starting point. So on the right, I have the research objectives here for this prototype stage: understanding how users will interact with your solution, feeling confident that users can complete the key journeys and tasks, and then knowing that your interface is free of major pain points before development and launch. Again, doing this research so you can feel really confident that your development resources are not being wasted. So once you know your prototype is usable, you might think that you're done with UX research because it's time to build it and launch it. But I just want to take a moment here to highlight the importance of accessibility research, especially because in my experience, it is often skipped and revisited long after launch. So if you think about how many times you've asked yourself, is my product, is my design usable? But have you asked yourself, is it usable for everyone? So a review of your product or feature using assistive technology, or better yet, with real users of assistive technologies, will tell you that your product is accessible and inclusive before you launch. I've just got a case study here. This customer was wondering specifically, yes, we have a live website. We know it's successful for most users, but how is it different for users with vision impairments? How do they experience our website? So we did in-depth interviews with customers with varying degrees of vision impairments using assistive technologies like screen readers, screen magnifiers, and even just like adjusted settings, right, to make websites easier for them to read. And the goal was really to understand that experience and where it can be improved. The site was mostly accessible, but some aspects were not ideal for participants using those screen readers or those screen mags. So we were able to give them clear recommendations for the developers to go into the code and address the concerns and make the website more accessible. So final stage, live product. And I want to acknowledge again that this is where a lot of you might be, right? You might own or work on a live product, but you are always looking to continuously improve it. Luckily, there are tons of research methodologies that are helpful for guiding improvements to an existing product, especially when combined with analytics data or voice of customer data, if you have that. Understanding current usage can point you to the gaps and the pain points that you need to improve. So some questions at this stage might be, how is my product being used and why? Again, journey mapping is a great methodology to get a visual of the experience that your user is having using your product. And then a diary study, right, where participants keep a log of their thoughts and experiences and activities over a period of time. What can I improve and iterate on? So usability testing is really helpful here, again, to find those those pain points and gaps. But another methodology I want to call it is segmentation, right? Looking at subsets of users so that post-launch of your product, you can provide a more tailored experience. So on the right side, you can see the objectives that we often do research to answer these questions with a live product. It's understanding how the product's being used, discovering the gaps and opportunities, and letting user data drive the prioritization of all the enhancements on your wish list. So the final starting point that I want to talk about today is you can start with your knowledge. As a product manager, you know the product better than anyone. So I'm going to talk through a couple of examples of simple ways you can use your knowledge to get your research goals nailed down and even get team buy-in on them, which I know can be equally important for moving things forward. So the first one, super simple, fill out a research brief. A research brief is how most projects at AnswerLab get started. Using an existing template and taking a stab at filling out key fields like background information on your project, what you need to know to make decisions, your existing assumptions and hypotheses, what visual materials you have to test with. Filling this out can help you quickly see if you already know enough information to get started on research, or if not, what are the gaps, right? What do you need? What do you need to learn? If you fill this out and you take it to your UX researcher, it'll be the start they need to help you nail down your objectives, choose the right methodology, get the ball rolling towards research. If you don't have a template at your organization, feel free to steal this one when we send the materials out. It's super simple, but it'll do the job. A more robust and team-centered way that you can approach this is getting your stakeholders and your team together and hosting a framing workshop. So this will help you brainstorm research questions and hypotheses. The example I've shown here as like a workshop exercise is called Uncovering the Unknowns. It's really pretty quick, but it's effective. So in the bottom left, quadrant 1, you would take 10, 15 minutes and identify what you know you know. So things you're 100% confident about, they're supported by robust data, they come from analytics or other resources you might have, like maybe you have market data or previous research. Then you move up to quadrant 2, things you know you don't know. So these are your questions, right? At a macro level, this could be things like, why are my customers doing what they're doing? What are their motivations? What are their wants and needs? At a micro level, it could be things like, we don't know if users will understand the content we've written on these new screens. We don't know if they're going to understand what the next step is from these new screens we're about to launch. Quadrant 3, things we don't know we know. This is dedicated time where your team can knowledge share, right? Make sure that everybody has access to all the sources of information. Everyone's equally informed and aligned. And then finally, quadrant 4, things we don't know. This is those black box scenarios and taking some time to think deeply about your own potential vulnerabilities and gaps. It can really stretch your team to see where research might be beneficial, especially if you're thinking about the future, which I know all of you are, that ideal future state of your product. This exercise, thinking about what you don't know, can help you pin down what you need to learn to get where you're trying to go. So this simple exercise can really help you examine what you know and what you don't know, and can help you understand and define what you need to learn from research. Okay, so now that we talked about 3 different ways you can get started to define your research objectives, I want to talk about another big challenge I know you may be facing, which is how to fit the research into your roadmap. I know your roadmap is probably packed. It's probably on a very tight schedule. So the how to fit it in and when to fit it in sort of depends on what research you need. So it all goes back to your business objectives and your research objectives and getting that right methodology. So thinking about the 2 major buckets of research, first, foundational. So foundational research, when your goal is discovery, right? Ideally, this should happen before design work. So if you're looking at a methodology like generative IDIs, personas, concept testing, journey maps, jobs to be done, you're trying to do this research before anything is designed. That way, all this foundational knowledge can inform the designs, right? Who am I designing for? What are their mental models? How do they currently solve the problem I'm trying to solve? If you're working within an agile approach, ideally this research is done before developers even form an agile team with regular stand-ups. Getting those foundational insights ready before the devs need direction on what code to write, what to build, where to spend their time, is the best way to guarantee that their work is driven by data and no time is wasted. But I know right now you might be thinking, like, when does anything ideal ever happen, right? What if it's too late? So here's my big, pretty obvious advice on this one. Do the foundational research anyways, right? There's no real right or wrong order to do this. The most important thing is to do it, right? Get the insights. So do it in parallel with your development so that it doesn't slow anything down, but it can be incorporated once the foundational research is done. So after you get your insights from the foundational research, you can get with your team. Again, maybe host a workshop. I recommend a lot of workshops apparently during this webinar, and ask these questions. What did we learn? What was validated? And that can be designs, direction, decisions, hypotheses. What was surprising or hard to hear, right? And then based on that, what do we need to change? As a product manager, I know you're dealing with changes all the time. Often they're from like outside variables you have no control over. So this is a space where you can use the flexibility and the adaptability that you've developed in your role to incorporate foundational insights, even if you're moving full speed ahead on a live mature product. I just want to take another minute for a case study. This one was a live software product. But this client needed to do foundational research because they knew that the rise of AI and automation was going to impact their product roadmap in a really significant way, and probably not a way that they could confidently predict. So I think a lot of us are in this place right now, right? We're like looking at AI, we're tracking it, we're wondering what the impact is going to be on existing products. How can we get ahead of it, or at the very least keep up with it, right? So these interviews gave this client foundational understanding of their users' expectations for the future, which they use as one piece of the puzzle that is like how to approach changes in technology in the future. So just quickly, their question was, what are the responsibilities of our customers and how these roles evolve with the rise of AI and automation? So again, in-depth interviews with a large sample, and they got a lot of actionable steps out of this to build a future platform that's going to meet customer expectations. Okay, so that was foundational research. And now the other, of course, big bucket is evaluative usability research. So this is when your methodologies are more tactical. Things like evaluative IDIs, task success and failure, unmoderated testing, qualitative benchmarking. So this type of research ideally should happen continuously alongside development. So development is typically on a set schedule, and UX research should be as well, so that the insights can drive decisions and those decisions can drive development. If you're working within an agile approach, the best practice is to do research on features and changes 2 to 3 sprints ahead of where development is, so that there's time to get the insights from the research and act on them before any coding starts. So how do we fit it into the schedule if we need to do it alongside development? So here I want to talk about 2 things, buy-in and speed. Getting buy-in on UX research overall is its own webinar. That's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk specifically about buy-in on a rapid cadence that matches development, because that's what's going to help you fit research into your roadmap in a way where you and your UXR are not being accused of slowing anything down. So some tips on how to get this buy-in. Involve your researcher early and often. The more you can involve your UXR in planning meetings and stand-ups, the better prepared they can be to hit the ground running to do research on designs that are in the pipeline. Encouraging engagement by the larger team. So engagement in the research from the larger team can lead to buy-in on speed, because if they observe some of the sessions firsthand, they're going to need less context when the research insights come in, and it's less likely that they're going to be surprised or pushed back when recommendations are given. I know that stakeholder alignment is a big ongoing challenge for product managers. So exposing stakeholders to UX research, it can really bring siloed teams together, right, to think about the user and let the user data drive decisions, settle priorities, maybe make your life a little bit easier. And then finally, I want to talk about this third bullet more in the next webinar in the series. which I was working on the content for this morning, and I'm really excited about. So in that one, I'm going to talk about what to do with the findings and insights once your UX researcher gives them to you. And one of those, but thinking about buy-in on speed, customizing the deliverable from a round of research can really help you get buy-in on a fast cadence and make that fast cadence work. For example, a list or a table format for recommendations can be easily transferred into a ticketing system like Jira for agile teams to act on in future sprints, or sharing out a couple of impactful quotes or video clips can be a way to build empathy and understanding for your user with the larger team in just a minute or two of their time. So when it comes to the second part, the how of executing fast research, consider setting up a rolling research program, or at AnswerLab, sometimes we call them a rapid labs program. I know you have a lot of dependencies and limitations. A program like this can help speed of research not be one of those limitations. So typically how it looks is it's research every 2 or 4 weeks on a set cadence. It's 6 participants per segment for usability. Even 5 is okay for usability. 60-minute in-depth interviews. And then depending on the complexity of the flows and how many screens you're testing, we fit in 1 to 3 topics per session. A program like this lets insights build up really quickly so that your users can drive your decisions for your product. And then I just have a couple of visuals here to show you a couple ways to implement this rolling research. On the left, you can see like the most regimented version that we sometimes see at AnswerLab, where it's research every week, right? Plan, do the sessions, quick turnaround report, and the very next week, go right into it. That doesn't work for everyone, of course. The one in the middle, the semi-regimented, is often a little bit easier on the organization's design team, right? Making sure that they have new designs and prototypes, time to iterate. You can see there's a break in there in the 3rd week. And then finally on the right, a fully customized schedule, right? Some organizations have customized development schedules and they need customized research schedules as well. As long as they're lined up, really any set schedule that you are just continuously iterating is going to help you match that research to the enhancements you're developing. And then finally, I just have this timeline example so that you can sort of see the milestones. What I like about this timeline example is, one, it shows like a start to finish in 2 weeks. It is possible. And the second is it shows that it's pretty low lift for the team, right? Like the researcher is doing most of the work here. The product team doesn't need to feel like a rolling research program is going to be a huge amount of work for them. So you can see it starts with a couple milestones around recruiting the right participants for your research, getting those specs finalized and starting to find them. And then about a week for walking the researcher through the stimuli and letting them write the mod guide, the research plan, getting that all finalized with stakeholder feedback. And then finally running the sessions over 2 days and a quick turnaround, light deliverable, sort of can get that done start to finish in 2 weeks. Whew, okay, I am going to recap just a little bit of what I talked about so far. So at any stage of your product, UX research can help you ensure market success, continuously improve your product, minimize waste. And to get there, you can turn your goals, your product stage, or your product knowledge into your research goals so you can do the right research at the right time and match the cadence of your research to the cadence of your development. So at AnswerLab, we encounter everything that I've talked about today, from helping to recommend the right methodology for where you are in the product development cycle, to running stakeholder alignment workshops, and even creating deliverables that help our clients define their objectives. Or I mentioned the CUJ playbook, right? Even define your product CUJs. We also execute tons of rapid research, usability research, customized to different development cycles and schedules. So if you're interested in learning more about us, learning more about how we do that, please reach out. And I really hope that you'll join me in 2 weeks for part 2 of this series, where, as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about what to do after you've done the research, right? You get the report, you have findings, you have insights, you have recommendations. How do you turn those into decisions and actual updates for your product? Okay, I have just under 10 minutes left, and I'm going to answer some of the questions that came in. Okay, I would love to hear about best practices and how to maximize efficiencies between product managers and UXRs. I love this question because, as I mentioned at the start, I've been in both roles and I've seen how collaboration between these two roles can really bring a lot of value. So I have a ton of tips for maximizing efficiency. In no particular order, first, observe each other's work, right? I mentioned the UXR attending planning meetings, the product manager attending sessions. Being close to each other's work is going to lead to efficiencies, but I also think it's worth sitting down. Second tip, sit down to clearly define your roles. It might seem like you're both working towards the same thing, and in a lot of ways you are, but there is a difference, right? The UX researcher is trying to make the product as useful as possible for the customer. And the product manager is trying to make the product as successful as possible, right? For the organization and for them in the market. And so there is a difference there. And clearly defining that is going to help reduce duplication, which can lead to efficiencies. And it's also going to help you make the difference in your roles clear to the rest of the team, right? The stakeholders, the designers, whoever else you're working with. Collaborate on insights. I want to talk about this in the second webinar too. So instead of a UX researcher just presenting insights, have a conversation about them, right? Treat it as a workshop. Talk as a team after each, finding about what the next steps are going to be. I actually got a question also in the pre-webinar questions you could submit about how a UXR can do readouts that make their findings more actionable for teams. And I'd ask that person to attend the next webinar in this series because I could talk more about it. But definitely, instead of a workshop, or instead of a readout, have a workshop and share your knowledge. Even making sure your researcher knows within reason about technical limitations, right? What's inside your control and what's outside your control. That is all going to help make their recommendations more appropriate and actionable for your team. Along those same lines, another tip for efficiency is to give your researcher all previous research, as well as time to read it, so that you don't do research again. Setting aside time to retro after each research project. Share what went well, share what could be improved. If you do that each time, you'll get more and more efficient as you work together. For product managers, once you have the methodology for your next project, ask your researcher for a recommendation on how high fidelity the materials need to be to get your answers. This can save so much time and resources if you ask them like, hey, here's my research questions, here's my methodology. What stimuli, how high fidelity does the stimuli actually need to be so that you don't do overkill, right? And put too many resources into the testing. And then finally, there's so many tips, but I'll move on to the next question after this. But my last advice for efficiency is to prioritize honesty and listening, right? Like a UX researcher has to deliver some hard to hear results sometimes, and a product manager might have to make some hard to swallow decisions. Research is only one data point that a product manager has to consider to make decisions. So it's okay as a product manager to be transparent with your UXR. And it's okay as a UX researcher to ask your product manager to transparently explain why they've made decisions. It can really help you guys collaborate and work side by side. Okay. Next question. Could you share a few tips on how to show the impact of user research to stakeholders? Yes. So I think I might have mentioned already that quotes, right? Quotes from the research and video clips can really build empathy using those words and reactions straight from the user. Inviting stakeholders to sessions, as I mentioned, or another idea that I've seen clients do successfully is to host a watch party. So people are really strapped for time. You might have 6 or 12 hours of interview sessions for the research. After the sessions are done, if you choose one session that was really impactful and that represents the themes you heard in the research, and host a watch party, invite everybody to watch the recording of the session together. You can talk in the chat. It's 1 hour of everybody's time, and it'll ensure that they see the impact. Choose your methodology, right? Like qualitative benchmarking, as I mentioned, it's more easily measured, which can sometimes really make the impact of our product experience front and center. And then document what you decided based on research as well as what you avoided based on research, right? So you had a concept that was never designed. You have a design that was never prototyped. You tested some features in the prototype that were never developed because they were pain points, they didn't work. Those are all cost-saving impacts, right? Which really matter to stakeholders, especially on the business side. Okay, I have time for one, maybe two more. I'd love to understand how to evangelize how product goals can map to more foundational research objectives. I love this question because I talked about mapping KPIs and CUJs, but that is evaluative, right? But foundational research is how you can see forward, right? So hopefully your product goals are both short-term and feature-centric, but also long-term and strategic about where you want to be. And where you want to be is where you are plus what, right? X. And you can solve for X with research. What do you need to do, change, build to get where you want to be? That's what foundational research can tell you. So evaluative research is going to tell you where you are, but foundational research can tell you where you need to go, what features users need that you can provide, what's that gap between where you are and where you want to be. So I think when it comes to evangelizing product goals, I think if you think about your long-term goals, your long-term vision, and tie foundational research to that, that is going to help you make those connections clear for the team. Okay, I'll do one more. How do I prioritize research work that's all in the roadmap and there are very few resources? Yes, this is one of those that I got ahead. So first, I'd recommend doing the CUJ mapping exercise. It's worth the time to see where your priorities should lie if KPI metrics, improving those metrics is your goal. Second, looking at where you can use low lift methodologies to get the answers you need. Concept testing with like a back of napkin idea, testing with static images or a mural board of concepts instead of building something. Desk research, right? Doing competitive review, a heuristic evaluation that can really save resources because you're not recruiting and finding participants, but can help you identify and fix low-hanging fruit before you put something in front of a user. Unmoderated testing can also be super fast for usability. Or if you're running a rapid research program, paring down your objectives so you can squeeze more than one topic in 2 to 3 topics in the hour with the participant can help you get feedback on multiple features in your roadmap with just one set of participants. Okay, I pushed it down to 1 minute left. I'm going to pass this back to Katie to wrap us up. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Molly. If you could just pop to the perfect. Yep, just want to remind everyone, keep an eye on your inbox. We will be sending a copy of the deck, the recording of this webinar, and a couple other resources that we think you might find helpful on the same topic. And then next slide again. And as I mentioned, as Molly mentioned, this is just the first part in a 2-part series. So Molly will be joining us again in 2 weeks on March 13th. It's also a Wednesday at the same time. And that's really about how to take the next step after the research is complete. So once you have your findings, once you have those recommendations, how do you actually turn that into an actionable next step for your product? So if you're not already registered for that, you can register on our website at answerlab.com/events. And we'll also share the direct link in the follow-up email so you can easily get on that list. And we really hope that you'll be able to join us. So with that, we will get you on to the rest of your day. Thank you so much for taking the time with us, and I hope you all found it useful. Thanks so much.